Yes, thank you very much for this kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to this already now very interesting conference. I'm going to focus on a very specific point on the catalog, the so-called Freimann catalog, and its significance. You'll see not only for the digital portal we have in Frankfurt am Main, but also for the history of the Freimann collection. The Freimann portal, the digital version of the pre-war Judaica collection of the Frankfurt University Library, provides unrestricted access to a vast range of important Judaica publications and thus serves as an indispensable resource for research. Here you see just one page out of the digital portal, and that's how, I don't know how much good you see it, but it's how it's built. You see the titles, and I'll explain later. You see on the side how you can search. The Frankfurt Pre-War Judaica collection contained all the works of the Wissen, schaft des Judentums, as you know, an important scholarly movement among European Jews in the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. Today, these books are an invaluable primary resource for historical research, not only for Jewish studies, but also for a diversity of disciplines of the humanities and the social sciences, as they provide insight into a broad range of religious and cultural developments worldwide. The next, please. The Frankfurt Hebraica and Judaica collection was created at the end of the 19th and early 20th centuries through generous donations of Frankfurt Jewish philanthropists, and the Rothschild family being the most well-known among them. And as you can see, different ex libris notices of different donors. Next. Professor Aaron Freimann, the responsible curator of the collection for 35 years until 1933, gained an international reputation as scholar, bibliographer, and expert of Hebrew manuscripts. Under his management, the collection developed into the largest and most significant Hebraica and Judaica collection on the European continent before World War II. Freimann was not only an outstanding scholar and considered to be the, quote, greatest living authority in the field of Jewish bibliographer, as he was termed in 1939 by Joshua Bloch, director of the Judaica division of the New York Public Library, where he later worked after his immigration, but had become one of the central figures of the organization of the Wissen, schaft des Judentums before the war. And the next shows you his Festschrift. He got a Festschrift. It should have appeared in 1931. It did appear in 1937 because the manuscript got lost and they had no copy. So they had to gather all the contributions again. And the original has an original dedication by Chaim Nachman Bialik, who wrote to him, whom he knew personally very well when Bialik was living in Bad Homburg, and they had a very close relationship. There is no time to list all of Freimann's projects, so just to mention one example, Freimann was part of the commission initiating and implementing the Encyclopedia Germania Judaica, and later worked together in this project with Ismar Elbogen. In 1932, Freimann succeeded in publishing a printed catalogue of the Judaica, the books in non-Hebrew letters, which was conceived as the first part of a comprehensive catalogue of the whole Hebraica and Judaica collection, and was thus titled, next please, as you will see, Catalogue of the Judaica and Hebraica, Volume 1, because of course he expected to have the Volume 2, should have been the Hebraica catalogue. As Aaron Freimann noted in his introduction to the catalogue, the second volume, containing the titles of Hebrew books, the Hebraica, as the librarians, you know, divide between books in Hebrew letters and non-Hebrew letters, was already planned and underway. Unfortunately, it could not be carried out because the Nazi rise to power. The nearly finished manuscript was destroyed during World War II, as were many Hebrew books. And I have to admit, when I started my work in the 90s in the library, I started a search through the whole collection into all kinds of uncatalogued books and things we still had to do, and I had the hope I would find this catalog. I did not. There is a photocopy in a very unordered way in the Schocken Institute in Jerusalem. When the Judaica catalog was published, it was praised by experts and scholars as the standard bibliography of Judaica and as a, quote, a milestone on the road of Jewish bibliography. Freimann was particularly praised for the fact that he was the first to compile a comprehensive catalogue of Judaica, while previous bibliographers had preferred to catalogue the Hebrew works. Besides the high bibliographical standard of the records, a further merit of the catalogue was that it was a systematic catalogue, where the titles were arranged according to subject and not alphabetically. And here you can see the one side of the contents, where you can see he's going according to, there are 10 chapters, he's going according to topics, subjects, like history, theology, music, art, Jewish law, and so on. And then he's subdividing, for history he's dividing into continents, into countries. The long-term significance of the catalogue can also be seen in the fact that the catalogue was reprinted in 1968. In this later edition, the old call numbers are no longer listed, as they became irrelevant because some of the books were missing or others had been rearranged. Now it is meant to be used as a bibliography and not as a catalogue of a collection. Nevertheless, among scholars, the catalogue is still regarded, I quote, as the largest complete bibliography of Jewish scholarship of the Weimar period, and at the same time as the best and most comprehensive Judaica catalogue of any German library. Before I will turn to the key role the Freimann catalogue played in the digital reconstruction of the famous pre-war Judaica collection, let me present to you in brief the historic function this catalogue fulfilled in securing the existence of the Judaica collection in Frankfurt. In 2 occasions, first during the years of the Nazi regime and then in the early period after 1945, this printed catalogue guaranteed the continuity of the Judaica collection and preserved it as a whole. The events of the Nazi years also had a significant impact on the development of the collections in the years after 1945 and up to the present. With the Nazi rise to power and the appointment of Friedrich Krebs, a convinced Nazi, as Lord Mayor of Frankfurt in March 1933, the existence of the Hebraica and Judaica collection was in danger. In addition, from 1927 onwards, the director of the Frankfurt Library was Richard Oehler, who, like the Mayor Krebs, was a member of the NSDAP and actively supported National Socialism out of conviction and not only out of opportunistic career aspiration. Next, please. And here you can see a photo from 1927, where you see the director of the library, and next to him, because he had a senior position also in the library, not only as in the Judaica department, is Aaron Freimann. After 1933, Richard Oehler immediately implemented the Nazi ideology into library practice, and as early as May 1933, on his own initiative and without any legal basis, restricted access to Marxist and other, what he called, suspicious literature in the library. These red access restricted stamps, you can see it up in the front, can still be found on numerous books today. In principle, every user who wanted to borrow banned literature had to personally obtain permission from the director to do so. And here we have a very nice example that you see in a book, what a book can tell. It not only tells that it was not allowed to be read during the Nazi time, but also, of course, that it came into the Judaica collection as a donation by Mrs. Frau Rosetta Merton. And you see the bookmark, the ex-libris of her, and she was as well daughter as a wife of bankers. The father was a Frankfurt banker, and her husband was a very big and well-known Frankfurt banker. Krebs and Oehler were very well aware of the international reputation of the Judaica collection and thus decided to use it in order to change the image of the city of Frankfurt, which was considered to be a liberal and Jewish-friendly town. Their intention was to instrumentalize the collection in order to give the city an appearance fitting the NS ideology, and to turn Frankfurt into, as it was called, die Stadt des deutschen Handwerks, the city of German craftsmanship. Not anymore the city of Jewish entrepreneurship or bankers or liberal city, but the city of the German craftsmanship. In the 1930s, various parties tried to acquire all or part of the Hebraica and Judaica collection from the library. Among them was Zalman Schocken, businessman, as you know, and Zionist, who in May 1934 aimed to purchase the Hebraica, the Hebrew works, from the library and to donate them to the Jewish National Library in Jerusalem. All requests were rejected, using the argument that the Hebraica and Judaica collection of the city library, the library was then called City Library, it was part of the city administration, and only after 1945 became named University Library, should not be sold as it constituted the largest European collection of for scholarly research of all fields related to Jews and Judaism. And therefore this unique resource would be an invaluable importance for future NS research as well. In 1936, the establishment of the Jewish Question Research Department of the Reichsinstitut for the History of the New Germany in Munich, die Forschungsabteilung Judenfrage des Reichsinstituts für Geschichte des Neuen Deutschlands, and its demand to transfer the Judaica collection to Munich posed a serious threat to the continued existence of the collection in Frankfurt. Mayor Krebs continued to refuse to sell the collection or to transfer it to Munich on permanent loan, and substantiated his argument by emphasizing that the Freimann catalogue could be found in all well-known libraries in the world. Accordingly, it would be unavoidable that the transfer of the collection from Frankfurt would cause a great stir abroad, especially since the holdings were partly donated by Frankfurt Jews, mainly in the last century. Quote, in a letter to the Culture Department in September 1936, he expressed his true intention. I quote, according to which I, Mayor Krebs, have set the goal of moving the planned research department on the Jewish question of the Reichsinstitut for the History of the New Germany to Frankfurt, due to the existence of the valuable Judaica collection here. A sale of our collection can hardly be considered, in my opinion. Krebs also published a statement in various Frankfurt newspapers with the headline, "The Judaica collection remains in Frankfurt." On November 20, 1936, the Jüdische Rundschau was therefore able to report with satisfaction, next please, that the city administration of Frankfurt rejected the suggestion made to them to sell the Judaica collection to the Reichsinstitut for the History of the New Germany in Munich or to lend it to them. Unexpected developments favored Krebs' plans, and he succeeded to initiate the establishment of an institute with the same NS ideological focus in Frankfurt. On the 1st of May in 1938, the research department on the Jewish question in Munich was dissolved by Walter Frank, president of the Reichsinstitute, because of internal disputes. The offer of the city of Frankfurt to make the Judaica collection available to the NSDAP for unrestricted use then finally led to the decision of Reichsleiter Alfred Rosenberg to set up a Nazi institute, the Institute for the Research of the Jewish Question, das Institut zur Erforschung der Judenfrage in Frankfurt. Next, please. The contract was signed in 1939. The institute officially opened on March 26, 1941. And this is a picture of the Frankfurt Römer, of the Frankfurt City Hall. And in the middle was the big chain, Ismar Krebs, the Oberbürgermeister, the Lord Mayor of Frankfurt, and all the important actors. So the institute was officially opened in 1941, but the books of the Judaica collection remained in the library and were not transferred to the institute. That means we had a contract where it says that the books will be transferred to the institute, but they remained where they were. And in reality, also nobody used them because, as you know, the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, the organization, they looted all the books from East Europe, or from West Europe, from all over Europe, and they had in the end many more books than the Frankfurt Judaica collection. So it was a fictitious contract, but saved the library where it was. Thus, the catalogue, one of the major achievements of Freimann's many years of work in the library, still had a decisive influence on the fate of the collection years after he was forced to leave and was no longer allowed to contribute to the collection. At that time, the Hebraica and Judaica collection comprised some 40,000 volumes, roughly half Judaica and half Hebraica. As a result of several air raids and bombings by the Allies in Frankfurt in the end of 1943 and in the spring of 1944, the library building was completely destroyed and most of the Hebrew books were destroyed, while the Judaica collection, which they had managed to bring into the countryside, remained intact in most parts, but not in all. After the Second World War, when no one could imagine a renewal of Jewish studies in Germany, the city of Frankfurt again considered to use the Judaica collection for its benefits. This time, the sale of the Judaica and Hebraica books and manuscripts was intended to secure additional funds for the library budget that would in turn enable financing the purchase of urgently needed modern research literature in other disciplines. Against this background, an exchange transaction between the library and the heirs of a Frankfurt Jewish property owner took place in 1950, as part of which valuable Hebrew manuscripts were exchanged for a property in the city center, and the library budget was credited with the equivalent value. While Hans Wilhelm Eppelsheimer, the first post-war library director, did support the deal of selling the Hebrew manuscripts, he strictly rejected the sale of the Judaica collection. He was able to successfully resist this request, using arguments similar to those used years before, stating that the Frankfurt Judaica collection was known all over the world and of great importance for research. In addition, he emphasized that the catalogue by Aaron Freimann was a very well compiled catalogue that in its printed version was to be found in almost all major libraries, and that, quote, the Judaica collection forms a coherent whole, which is expected to be in Frankfurt, and which we cannot sell without damaging our reputation and European scholarship. So once again, Aaron Freimann's catalogue, that had made the outstanding scholarly importance of the collection known all over the world, ensured the continued existence of the Judaica collection in the university library in the post-war years and until today. Furthermore, the existing extensive collection was in turn crucial for the decision of the German Research Foundation in 1949 to establish and generously co-finance the special collections of Wissen, schaft des Judentums, Jewish Studies, and Israel Studies at the Frankfurt University Library for more than 60 years, until this program was replaced by the current existing specialized information services for Jewish studies. Now let me turn to the role the Freimann catalogue played in the virtual reconstruction of the former Priva Judaica collection as an open access online portal. In World War II, the Judaica collection was partly damaged, books were lost, and some were rearranged and received new call numbers. The printed catalogue, therefore, remains the only source to identify the original publications included in the Priva collection, to offer comprehensive and reliable bibliographical data, and thus to isolate the works missing from the current Judaica collection for inclusion in the online version. Even so, titles were missing. All those years, the historic collection still enjoyed an outstanding reputation in the international community of scholars. The rising demand for these historical resources in the last decades made the loss of certain titles that once belonged to the collection even more visible. A growing number of scholars are researching Jewish topics and become aware of the lack of these titles as they are documented in the Freimann catalogue. Access to the books within the collection became further complicated by the fact that these titles today have to be searched in online catalogues, where they appear in different form because cataloging rules have changed over the years. In some cases, the deterioration of the physical appearance of the books made lending impossible, and access to them had to be denied totally. Based on these facts, digitizing the text and presenting them on an online portal was the only way to enable unhindered access to the publications. Next. Here you have an example. The first phase of the virtual reconstruction of the Freimann collection was carried out in the years 2007-2010 and was financed by the German Research Foundation. On the basis of the Freimann catalogue, the volumes in the Frankfurt University Library were microfilmed and digitized, and then we still digitized black and white, as you can see. While some of the titles missing in the University Library were identified in other libraries, ordered by interlibrary loan, and then microfilmed and digitized as well. Thus, a large part of the original pre-war collection could be reconstructed virtually, while in reality the physical books remained scattered in different German libraries. And here you can see the title and where it belongs. It's in the first line, to which part of the collection, and you see the sub on the side. You can see exactly to which chapter it belongs. The goal could not be completed, however, because on the one hand, these procedures involved qualified staff and were very time-consuming, and on the other hand, some titles could not be found in German libraries or were too fragile to be supplied for the project. As a result, some resources were still not digitized and not presented in the portal. In a second phase, an international collaboration of the University Library Frankfurt with the Center for Jewish History, and within it the Leo Baeck Institute in New York, funded by a joint grant of the National Endowment for the Humanities and the DFG, the German Research Foundation, and carried out in the years 2011-2014, brought the realization of the project's original aim to virtually reconstruct the complete famous Priva collection considerably closer. We're still not there, but it's closer. And we can see, as a question of provenance, of course, every book that comes as a digital image. And they were digitized, of course, in New York, and only the digital images came to Frankfurt, is shown that it comes from the Leo Baeck Institute, New York. The web presentation of the Freimann catalogue reproduces the structure of the Freimann catalogue itself, which is, as mentioned, lists the works according to topics and not alphabetically. Freimann's systematic division into 10 chapters and the associated sub-chapters was adopted unchanged. And we decided, even so today, scholarship would do it differently, and also after the catalogue appeared, everybody praised the catalogue, but of course there are some chapters which are strange, or some sub-chapters belong, or let's say subtopics, or themes we would put today in other topics and other chapters. We decided, because every library or many libraries have the catalogue and they are known to be like this, and we would not start a discussion how to change and which systematic order to do. We took it over like the Freimann catalogue. So you have digital, you can browse in the books like you would go to the shelf. This means that the chapter structure of the printed catalogue is also displayed in the portal, and the user can also research the works as part of the subject groups and subgroups. Browsing through thematically related titles is possible, and the user can move from one book to the next in the collection like on a virtual shelf. In addition, the database offers various search options, including lately the full text search, downloading and printing the text. And the next, everybody needs statistics, I'm told, so virtually reconstructing the largest and most significant Judaica collection on the European continent before World War II, and enabling researchers to discover and access this scholarly outstanding collection again, is an accomplishment that cannot be overestimated. The necessity of this resource and its significance for Jewish studies and beyond is proven constantly by the intense use of the portals, as the statistics show us. And as you can see, we have different months, and I think the highest is 60,000 students or scholars accessing the collection. You can see it according to every month, how many downloads, how many scholars, and of course this is only possible virtually. Nobody could come to the library. No library could ever handle so many accesses. Thank you very much.